Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Insiders Friday afternoon NFL Daily Fantasy Show. I am Davis Maddock at Davis Maddock on Twitter. I'm here with Dan Gaspar at Mr. Tuttle05. But most importantly, I'm here with the Mac himself, captain of Team Pockets on Swole, Evan Silva. Evan, glad to have you back. How many Rob Gronkowski lineups did you get in for the Thursday Start contest? Because I know that's the only reason I played Thursday Start was to get Gronkowski and then get Mike Evans locked in at like 3% owned.
100% exposure in cash and quite a bit in GPP. That was a rough night for JJ. Our buddy LRQB hates Gronk. Just a
Not
tough night
fun.
for him. I know
Well,
he struggled.
he had Scott Chandler, bro. It's like so he had that sweet one
Oh
touchdown from
yeah,
Scott Chandler, bro. You know that's the JJ
yeah,
life. All right.
that's
Well,
exactly right.
let's get started. We can do a little bit of preview of week one. We'll talk about some things we're excited about, maybe some guys we're fading, favorite plays, spots we're avoiding. It'll be fun. And Dan and I haven't slept, so if we're a little haggard, please forgive us. But that's why we have Evan, because Evan knows more about football than I could ever know, than Dan could ever know. So we'll start off right with a little chalk report. How much do you love Sam Bradford this weekend?
I like him a lot. Um, I'm looking elsewhere at quarterback and cash this week. I'm looking at
Really?
Tyrod, Ty God. Yeah, but I think that Sam Bradford makes for an excellent cash game play. I've got a little bit of him in GPP for sure, stacking him up with J Matt, your boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, his price is cheap, and he is a pretty decent bet, I think, to finish as a top three fantasy quarterback in a game with a huge total. Um, I think the Eagles have the biggest total of the week.
Yeah, I believe they do. I definitely I like the Tyrod play. I think he's really interesting. I wrote him up, but like we talked about with JJ yesterday, it's just kind of a floor thing. Dan, after editing content all weekend long, I mean, you've read every possible take on our website. Where are you leaning right now between Tyrod and Bradford?
It would have to be, if we're just talking cash games specifically, it would have to be Bradford. I just don't trust the floor of Tyrod like you guys just mentioned, or that you just mentioned, Davis. It he's a better play. I know you guys talked about it last year or last night. He's a better play than Sean Hill was last year, but
Oh
it
yeah.
still just screams one of those stay away cash game wise. It just seems like you're introducing a lot of variance into your lineup if you play him in cash games.
Well, the thing that Tyrod does have going for him is that the Colts kind of just they're just super bad everywhere. Like they have a good cornerback, they have a good cornerback, but I mean, Evan, do you see anything else with the Colts defense that there really is to fear?
No, I mean I think it's going to be a rough week for Sammy Watkins with Vontae Davis on him. But aside from that, they're missing their number two corner, and I know Greg Toller gives up a lot of production, but and so people think of him as a guy to target, but he's actually a pretty good press corner. He's an above average NFL press corner, and their safeties are not very good. Mike Adams is really old. They replaced LaRon Landry with Dwight Lowry, who's like a 30-year-old journeyman type. They don't have pass rushers. Robert Mathis is their pass rusher. He's coming off a torn Achilles tendon. He's like 35 years old. He may not even play. He's listed as questionable.
I believe
The
Toller
thing,
is
the
as
thing that,
well.
that Toller is out.
Yeah, there you
The
go.
thing that I kind of like about Tyrod Taylor, and this could also create for a lower floor, is that with so many guys, like he didn't practice at all with the wide receivers, Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, Percy Harvin, all those guys have been injured. So Tyrod Taylor has not spent a lot of time with those guys. And then LaShawn McCoy has also been banged up, missed a ton of time. So I think they're going to need Tyrod Taylor to make plays. They're going to need him to be a playmaker. Whereas if they had been at 100%, if they entered this game at 100%, he would be asked to be a caretaker, but I think they're going to ask him to make plays, which is going to. I mean that's going to increase his upside, but I hear you on the lower floor. It's definitely within his range of outcomes that he has a legitimately bad game. I still like him in cash though. I think I feel good. I feel solid about him. I don't feel great about him, and you guys probably feel great about Sam Bradford, but I feel pretty
Definitely.
solid about him. And that's on FanDuel at least that's like $2,500 in savings that I can pump into an RB or go with Julio and AJ Green.
Yeah, and I definitely think there are a lot of people who will do that. Like I think Tyrod will be very high owned, but I don't think I'll be doing it in cash. Maybe I'll do a second team, just in case I'm wrong to get an Adrian Peterson, Julio Jones lineup out there. I want to talk about another quarterback though, and I haven't really seen a ton of people discuss Ryan Tannehill this week. I wrote him up as sort of one of my also considers, and he's kind of my favorite tournament quarterback just because I think that offense is going to be really good this year. Devonte Parker, we didn't know what his health status was going to be, but it looks like he'll be ready for week one. Are you as high on the Dolphins offense as I am, Evan?
I like their passing game. There are some concerns. The total is pretty low on that game. But
It is.
they theoretically they should have to pass to move the ball. I mean, last year the Redskins finished top 9 in Football Outsiders run defense DVOA. They pumped a ton of offseason resources into getting Pot Roast Knighton, who's a monster nose tackle. They paid a ton of money to Stephen Paya, who last year was the Bears defensive lineman. I mean, they're going to be tough to run the football against for sure, and that should theoretically result and a lot of passing for Ryan Tannehill, a lot of targets for Jarvis Landry, and I like Jordan Cameron, who, by the way, is really, really cheap at tight end.
On DraftKings, yes. Dolphins offense. What have you seen coming through the ranks this week on Fantasy Insiders, Dan, about the Dolphins offense?
Yeah, we've actually, I think we've covered them pretty well. I've seen Tannehill listed in a couple different articles. I know our writing contest winner, Jimmer Frat at Jimmer Frat's his handle. He actually wrote that, and it was a bold statement. He wrote that Tannehill was going to be the top QB scoring, or top scoring quarterback option this week. And I don't think it's that much of a stretch. I'm kind of with you guys. I think he's a very good option. Also like Jarvis Landry. I know we wrote him up quite a bit. I think Rich Rebar, Lord Reeves, gave some love to Jarvis Landry in his write-up as well. And he's a great guy for PPR because he's just going to keep getting catches. He's going to get those receptions and rack up points that way, even if he doesn't have the receiving yards to go with it.
And the matchup on Jarvis Landry is gorgeous. I mean, the Redskins are going to be without Bashad Breeland, who would have kicked inside the slot corner in their nickel package. He's suspended, so they're turning to a guy by the name of Justin Rogers, who is
I
back.
couldn't
I mean,
find
he's just
any
like
info on him.
he's just a borderline NFL player. So the matchup is really, really good on Jarvis Landry. I think he sees 8 to 12 targets.
I think he does too. He's one of my favorite plays as like a mid-tier wide receiver. Like I think what a lot of people will do is they'll make the mistake of being like, well, you're kind of just playing Landry for his floor, so why wouldn't I just play Eddie Royal or Stevie Johnson instead? But I definitely think that is a mistake because Landry is like a better caliber of player, and he has a better quarterback. Do you want to talk about Stevie Johnson real
Oh,
quick, Evan?
were you just throwing salt on Stevie?
Yes,
He's the
yes.
he's the play of the week. He's the play of the week, Davis.
He's not the play. He's
No
a good
intel.
play.
He's a great play. He costs 4,700 on FanDuel,
He's
which is
he's
right above
much
minimum.
he's much less
I
necessary now that everyone will have Devonte Adams. Before the Devonte Adams thing, he was a very, very good play.
he's gonna outscore Devonte Adams.
That
Stevie.
is a hot take. There we go. There we go. It's time.
Uh,
The gang is back together.
no Antonio Gates. Looks
Just
like
Justin
Ladarius
Miles.
Green, questionable at best. Um, I talked to the beat writer, Union Tribune, San Diego. I was like, tell me this is Stevie week. I was like, tell me he's going to blow up. and Michael Gelkin, he agreed. He went on the record.
Hey, dude,
Um,
I put him in the article. I am on. He's 3,700 on DraftKings as well. Like, I think he's pretty firmly in play. But I do think, like, if you're constructing a cash lineup and you're going with Stevie instead of Devonte Adams, I think you're doing it wrong.
Is this going to
okay,
be? We're going to see
you can
Evan
think that.
Silva.
The
We're
the
going to see
matchups are
Silva
also
be the
great for
guy.
Stevie. If you look at the outside corners in Detroit, Darius Slay and Rashawn
They're
Mathis
good.
are good.
Yeah.
The slot corner for Detroit is Josh Wilson, who is a guy who has bounced around the NFL, terrible PFF grades the last 2 years. That's where Stevie's going to be balling. This is Stevie week.
I
Embrace it.
mean, I started from being in a spot where I said absolutely not to embracing it. But so the thing, and I want to get Dan's a Packers fan, so I want him to talk about Adams a little bit too. Is it's such a weird spot because I'm not in love with Adams as a player, and I kind of think that he's generally inefficient, but his quarterback is the best in the league, and the Bears have got to be the best possible matchup. So, where are you at, especially in terms of game theory, Dan, on Stevie Johnson versus Devonte Adams?
It's I think game theory wise, it's one of those where you just don't go Devonte Adams cash games because he is. I don't want to say safe, relatively safe option, but I guess he is a relatively safe option, and you just know he's going to be heavily owned. Whereas a guy like Stevie Johnson, I mean, if you feel like you have a read on it, you should never just take a guy because they're going to be heavily owned. So if you really have a strong read on Stevie Johnson and think that's the way to go, then go that way. But I don't think I don't think Stevie's as good of a play as Devonte Adams this week. And for cash games, I think he's going to be a guy you want to roster. I think though, because we do have Devonte Adams so cheap, and I saw this coming through with a lot of our articles. We have a lot of guys that think that the value's at the wide receiver position as opposed to the running back position. So guys like Devonte Adams, guys like Stevie Johnson, where you're going to see a lot of value wide receivers taken. So I think the strategy in GPPs, at least the strategy I'll be taking, is I'll actually be paying up at the position. I'll look to save elsewhere, whether that be just going cheap tight end, whether that be a cheap quarterback. But I think spending up at the wide receiver position can give you some access to some guys that might be a little underowned. Guys like Julio Jones, because of his price tag, I don't think he's going to be very heavily owned.
I think a lot
I
of
threw a
people are
bunch of
going to be
entries
doing
into
so.
the Thursday Bomb, which is the $25 game, the big $25 tournament on FanDuel, and Stevie was only 4.6% owned. Most people are thinking like you guys. I just think the Chargers are going to have to. They're going to have to throw to move it. Their running game looked atrocious in the
That's true.
preseason. Eventually, I think it'll get better. I do think it'll get better. They have a lot of good pieces on the line. I think Melvin Gordon will get his issues fixed over the course of the year. I think they're going to dial up a short passing game. A lot of Stevie, a lot of Danny Woodhead, some Keenan Allen.
That's what Rivers is good at, anyways. That is, that's kind of his skill set. Someone brought up a question in chat that I think is really interesting because I kind of think Devonte Adams is like the best GBP fade ever because, like I said, he was one of the least efficient wide receivers in the NFL last year. The own rate is going to be insane with him. Like in constructing Millionaire Maker teams, Sunday Million teams, like an excellent pivot on FanDuel is just using Nelson Aguilar for 5,500 instead of Devonte Adams because what do you think Adams will be owned in the Sunday Million, Evan?
He was 33% in the FanDuel Thursday Bomb.
Amazing.
33%. I would guess that with that Thursday game out of the way, he's pushing 40% on in the Sunday and Monday slate.
Yeah. So is this kind of a because he's the chalk, but I don't think he's a chalk in a way that like easily leads to 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like it's not like we're projecting a crazy high ceiling for him. Do you think that fading Adams is like a viable strategy in GPPs, Dan?
Yeah, especially at that own percentage. If we're talking 30% own percentage in Devonte Adams, there's definitely places you can get similar production or probably a similar production for the same price or cheaper. You might have to take guys that are going to provide potentially higher variance. They might not have as high a floor as Devonte Adams, but you can take guys that have similar ceiling or similar upsides. I know a guy we wrote a lot about on our site would be like John Brown. If you want to go that route, he's a guy that I think provides a similar price point and would be a good pivot off of Adams. I mean, it's football. Even in the best matchups, players aren't going to, go off every single game. And like you said, I'm not expecting 140 yards, 2 touchdowns from Devonte or anything like that. So he's definitely someone that you can fade in GPPs and not have to worry too much about it.
I absolutely have a lot of Devonte Adams. I put him in my Thursday cash lineups, and I did a ton of that. I'm definitely gonna have a bunch of them in the upcoming slate. But I don't think he's the lock that people think that he is. I mean, they brought back James Jones. He's going to be able to jump right in, I think. Richard Rodgers has a bigger role this year.
Yes.
Cobb is going to be great. I think this is probably going to be a Lacey game anyways. I mean, they're 7-point favorites against the Bears, who if you look at their run defense personnel, it is it's a laughing stock. They're without Jay Ratliff, who's their best run defender. They lost Paya, who I mentioned earlier, in free agency. It's an absolute joke, man. Lacey should eat big time.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's talk about John Brown because that's sort of a player that in general does not really fit the mold of guys that I like, but he was a very very productive college player. Had a really good combine, was very good as a rookie, and I think steps into a role that Carson Palmer is really comfortable with, and is going against a Saints secondary without Keenan Lewis. And if he's matched up against Browner, who is questionable, who might not even go, I think his skill set actually works perfectly against Browner, who's kind of a stiff-hipped, slow-footed, larger type cornerback. Are you on John Brown this week, Evan?
I'm totally with you on pretty much all that analysis. Brandon Browner's 6'4" and 221 pounds. That's like a weak side linebacker. That's like, maybe Cam Chancellor as a safety. I mean, he can't move. He has no short area quickness. He's just a big guy who tries to get your hands on you. But speed guys can run by him or get past him at the line. I mean, he's a bad matchup great matchup for John Brown. I wish that Michael Floyd wasn't playing. That's my thing with John Brown and why I think he's more of a GPP than a cash. But he's certainly a guy I've got in spots, and I think Carson Palmer with John Brown's stack is definitely worth a look. It's such a good matchup. They've got a pretty good team total. I think it's over 25 points.
It is.
And their RBs are all like pass catching types. So I mean, Palmer should have a good day. He did look kind of shaky in the preseason though, I thought.
Yeah. Then I'm definitely sure we'll get into a David Johnson discussion at some point throughout the course of this season because he's going to work himself into a
Sure.
real prominent role, Evan. You already know.
Yeah. Is he going to be this year's Jeremy Hill, you think?
No, no, no. He's not a 20 touch a game guy yet. Not yet. He'll get there. He's not big enough yet. So we just got a question. We'll talk about some top running backs and then top wide receivers, so kind of high price guys. It's a little bit of a hot take for me that I think Adrian Peterson is the number one running back this week, and it sounds like you're on Fat Eddie as your number one guy, Evan.
Yeah. And I feel like, and we already talked about him, but I feel like people are not going to be on DeMarco Murray because
Yes.
everyone's going to be on Bradford and J Matt. And some people will even be on Aguilar, which is really dicey to me. I don't know how much he's going to play. I don't know how many targets he's going to get. I don't know how many snaps he's going to get. I want to see a game where Nelson Aguilar is utilized before, investing money into him. DeMarco Murray, this is a great spot for him. The Falcons they had a bad run D last year. They went outside Brooks Reed to be their auto Sam linebacker. He's out indefinitely after groin surgery. Um, I think that DeMarco Murray will go surprisingly low owned. He'd be among my top 3 DFS running back plays this week for sure. Lacy is up there as my number one, and I think Peterson and Jeremy Hill are also in the conversation. And I really like Mark Ingram as well. That's a guy who I think will be very much underowned. People look at Arizona, oh, that's a bad matchup. I don't think it's a bad matchup. Last year, the Cardinals gave up 4.4 yards per carry on the ground. That's a lot. And then they lost Dan Williams, who's their 330-pound nose tackle. They cut Matt Shaughnessy, who was a plus run defender on PFF last year. They lost Larry Foote. He retired. So I think Mark Ingram is a great sort of contrarian play. A lot of people will not be looking at him,
Really glad.
especially with no C.J. Spiller, man.
Yes.
With no C.J. Spiller, I think that Mark Ingram goes from a guy who you project for 2 catches to a guy who might get 5 catches.
I wrote him up, and I'm actually like strongly considering him for cash games at his price point, especially on DraftKings. What do you think about C.J. Anderson, Evan?
I like that. Okay, so the Ravens traded Haloti Ngata to the Lions, and the guy that they were counting on to replace Haloti Ngata, Timmy Jernigan, who had a great rookie season, he was a really high pick last year. He is not going to play. He's listed as doubtful with a knee injury. So, and they're really aging, man. Like you look at their outside linebackers, Terrell Suggs and Elvis Dumervil. Those guys are super old.
Yep.
Brandon Williams is a stud nose tackle. But the other defensive end, Chris Canty, he is super old. He actually retired after last season, and then he came back. So I think and this is a home game for Denver. I think that's a good play. JJ loves that play as well.
Definitely. It's a volume play. All right, Dan. Top running backs. You read the content all week. Talking with Evan. Adrian Peterson, Lacy, C.J. Anderson, Murray. Who are your top guys?
Yeah, I'm on the Lacy train as the number one running back. I do think game flow is going to fit him well. I think it is a Lacy eat week. So I like him quite a bit. I actually don't hate the strategy of basically just playing Lacy and have that be your Green Bay exposure. As we talked already, Devonte Adams is obviously going to be the chalk. But if you want to take a route that you fade him but still get exposure to Green Bay, I think that is the way to go. Just roster Lacy and then move on from there. I'm a little bit. I'm not as bullish as you are on Adrian Peterson. I think there's a little bit more reason to be a little weary there. You did bring up some good options, and I'll let you discuss the reasoning for AP, and I'll let you discuss that in a little bit. But I do think I'm a little bit more weary there than the general player is. Other than that, it's kind of interesting because running back does drop off a cliff a little bit. Obviously, we have Jeremy Hill, who's a great option as well, and I think he'll be fairly highly owned. And then you kind of have to take a look at some of the lower priced running backs. I think kind of the next in line as far as owned percentages and in good matchups, you're going to see guys like Chris Ivory and Doug Martin, I think, a lot. I don't have a strong lean either way on Ivory versus Martin, so I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
I have an opinion, but I want Evan to go because I have a feeling that he has a Doug Martin hot take one way or the other right now. I have a feeling.
No, I'm kind of lukewarm on Doug Martin. It always scares me when teams have legitimately bad O-lines and bad defenses for the running back, and then you don't know how much the running back's going to play in the passing game. Doug Martin looked great this preseason. I would venture to say that he looked better this preseason that he did as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a good matchup for Doug Martin, and I definitely have some exposure to him.
It's a great matchup because Tennessee, there are not enough adjectives for how bad they are at football.
Yeah, and they also lost their nose tackle, Sammy Lee Hill, to MCL surgery. He won't play. So it is a really, really good matchup for Doug Martin. I'm a little bit more leery of him just because of his teammates. His teammates aren't very good. I feel a little bit better about Chris Ivory's teammates. And I love Chris Ivory as a runner. He's very much like Marshawn Lynch. He was used a bunch in the passing game this preseason, something that he has never really experienced before. and he excelled doing it. If you go back, the Jets' new OC is Chan Gailey. If you go back and look at the efficiency, the yards per carry averages of CJ Spiller and Fred Jackson over the course of their careers, they always had really high yards per carry averages because Chan Gailey spreads out the field, man. He will use 4 and 5 wide receiver sets. He was doing that this preseason. I talked to their beat writer, Manish Mehta. He totally expects them to play a bunch of spread offense this year. And the way to attack Cleveland is on the ground. The Browns last year finished 31st. They finished dead last in rushing yards allowed. They also finished 31st in Football Outsiders run defense DVOA. They used a high pick on Danny Shelton, but he is a rookie, and the rest of their front seven isn't like glaringly great or anything like that. And then if you go back and look at Mike Pettine's history, the Browns head coach, in 2013 he was the Bills defensive coordinator. The Bills were loaded up front that year they had Darius, they had Kyle Williams, Mario Williams was there. I mean, they were loaded. They finished 28th against the run. So I tend to believe that it might be a function of Mike Pettine's scheme, that he has leaky run defenses, and they're high in interceptions. So it's more of like a bend but don't break defense where they're trying to make turnover. They're trying to create turnovers. Yeah. So I love the correlation play of Chris Ivory and the Jets defense this week. Josh McCown looks like the worst quarterback in the NFL, a guy the Browns are going to have to bench within the next month for Johnny Manziel, and then we can start Johnny Manziel as a cash game play.
I think that's the only thing to do, Evan. I think the only option will be to use Manziel in cash.
Lacey at RB with Ivory at RB2 and Jets D. I think that is a great great base, a great core to start off with.
Jets defense, I actually think, is chalkier than Devonte Adams. Like, I legitimately think the Jets defense will be the highest owned player in like any random 50-50 you click on. Like, seriously, there's not even a compelling case for anyone else in cash. Now, of course, in tournaments, there's a lot of stuff you can do, but I actually don't see anything else. The one thing I'll say about Ivory is I obviously love him. He's got a great price almost everywhere. I'm like a little iffy about the Danny Shelton thing because that dude is an impact player, I think, pretty immediately. He played well in the preseason, but it's not like the Jets are. It's not like you can't run to the right tackle instead of you know what I'm saying. Like, it's not like if that's your best player, right, there are ways to avoid it.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's not going to be like bunch formations. It's going to be Anunwa, it's going to be Marshall, it's going to be Decker, it's going to be Cumberland, it's going to be Curley. Devin Smith is listed he's not going to play. But I mean, they are going to have a bunch of pass catchers out there running routes. Nick Mangold is the Jet center. Okay, Danny Shelton is making his NFL debut against Nick Mangold.
Yeah, that's not
good luck to Danny Shelton.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a pretty good point. I do want to talk about Adrian Peterson real quick. I know I've seen you kind of tweet about the offensive line injuries there. That's absolutely a concern. But for me, I think the best way to attack this is Adrian Peterson is playing against a B team defense. The 49ers might be a bottom 5 NFL team this year. Like, seriously, they really might. They've lost their 4 highest Pro Football Focus graded players. They lost legendary linebacker Patrick Willis. They lost Ray McDonald. They lost Borland. They lost all of their guys who were so great at stopping the run. And I think that maybe the public does not realize that. They're going to see San Francisco 49ers. They're like, oh, you can't play a running back against the 49ers. It's the 49ers. And I think that it'll lead to Peterson being a little bit lower owned. And he is the running back. If you with a gun to your head had to say which running back will get the most total touches for his team on a normal game script game, it would almost always be Adrian Peterson because that's the way the Vikings offense has always worked. And now he's finally playing a full season with a coach who will prioritize passing to the running back. Matt Asiata finished with the second most receptions on that team last year, splitting time with Jerick McKinnon. Well, Asiata and McKinnon are not going to see the field with Peterson healthy. So is that a hot take, Evan, or do you kind of agree with where I'm coming from?
No, I do kind of agree. I like that the Vikings are 2.5 point favorites on the road too. That's kind of
That's a
aggressive.
big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I did notice that was a pick'em game like about a week ago, so that may be the line moving just because of the money that people are
I mean, if
betting.
that's the
But
that
either
would
way,
be the that's a
it's a
bad
good
line.
spot for AP. It's a good spot for AP. The concern is he's old. We haven't seen him in a year. They lost John Sullivan, who's like one of the best centers in football, and they lost Phil Lodeholt, who's a mountain of a man at right tackle. And you
They
don't
had
like,
Khalil
you know,
though. They got Khalil though.
right, right. He's terrible. But it's just you're betting on AP. I think he's a great tournament play, and if you're right about people not being on him, then that makes him all the more great of a tournament play.
Okay. We'll transition. Let's talk about top price wide receivers because I actually don't think there is a one slam dunk top wide receiver this week. I think the closest thing is probably Odell Beckham, but I hate that people pretend like Brandon Carr has always been filth, basically, Like that's kind of like Brandon Carr used to be an all pro cornerback. And I don't know if that talent disappeared or what, but so just overall top wide receiver play, price agnostic. Who do you think scores the most points, Evan?
Amongst two,
Amongst all wide receivers, who do you think just scores the most wide receiver points?
Julio.
Okay, that's what I thought, and I'm going to toss it over to Dan, but then we'll come back and we'll talk about that matchup a little bit. Dan, so just top overall wide receiver plays. Who do you think is kind of the move? Are you also with Evan that is Julio?
Yeah, I am. Julio.
Okay. I am a little concerned that people are remembering the Eagles from last season and they're saying Kerry Williams utter garbage, Bradley Fetcher utter garbage. It didn't matter. You would just take the best wide receiver against them. Byron Maxwell is not a stiff. He's not a bad player. There's definitely still the volume associated with playing against the Eagles. But talk to me a little bit about Byron Maxwell. Am I overrating him, Evan?
He doesn't scare me. I mean, I agree that he's solid. He's in. He was a good starter in a great Seattle defense, where he was surrounded by several future Hall of Famers. And I noticed one interesting comment that Byron Maxwell made today, that he expects to play on one side against Atlanta. And one thing that and so he may not shadow Julio on every play.
Yeah.
And the the numbers 2 through 4 cornerbacks in Philly are just complete garbage. Eric
Yeah.
Rowe has been playing at safety recently. Actually, I think he might be a good player eventually, but he's been practicing at safety recently. EJ Biggers is a guy that Julio would just dismantle. And then the other guy is Nolan Carroll, who was on the roster last year and couldn't play ahead of uh, Bradley Fletcher and Kerry Williams, so that's not a good sign for Nolan Carroll. Um, the huge over under, the pace at which Atlanta will likely be forced to play. I mean, it's a great setup, and I don't think that Julio is going to get shut down by Byron
Oh,
Maxwell by any
not
stretch.
getting shut down. It's kind of just more
Right.
a general
Just kind of
question.
hindering him. Just kind of hindering him. I mean, that could happen, that could happen. But I tend to believe that one thing that Kyle Shanahan is great at doing, he did this with Pierre Garcon when he led the NFL in catches a couple of years ago. He did this with Andre Johnson in Houston, is that X receiver moves around. And that's what Julio is. He's going to move around a ton, and he's going to be very difficult for, I mean, Byron Maxwell is going to have to run all over the field to go chase him around, and the defensive coordinators don't always like to do that with their CBs.
Yeah, it's just I'm sort of asking more from a theoretical perspective in that last year I mean, every week the top wide receiver was whoever the best wide receiver playing Philly was, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not they're just not as terrible in the secondary. But I want to ask Dan about Calvin Johnson, Odell Beckham, Des Bryant. Bryant will be up against Amukamara or the other Giants corner whose name I'm forgetting Rogers Cromartie, who both of who I think are capable NFL talents. Calvin Johnson up against Jason Verrett for the Chargers, who he has a pretty big height advantage on, and then Beckham against Brandon Carr. Are you seeing any of those guys as viable cash game options?
Yeah, I think all of them are. And you kind of mentioned the matchups there. They're all not, not necessarily ideal
That's the
matchups.
thing.
I
It's
think
not ideal for any of them.
if you're gonna try to exploit one, I think it would just be Megatron based on size, and kind of just try to play the size advantage. Perhaps we'll put in some work just with Stafford throwing him up some balls. That would be the one that I guess I would target the most out of those three, especially if you're, I guess, looking to exploit matchup. But I think Dez is another good play as well, obviously. Um, so yeah.
I think we're going to see something interesting with the Cowboys this year, whereas Dez was great last year on like legit limited volume. Like his points per target numbers were crazy. And I think the Cowboys are going to throw a lot more this season. And I actually think Tony Romo, here we go. Here we go. It's hot takes time. Tony Romo will be on the team that wins the Millionaire Maker, Evan. There's your prediction. Tony Romo will be on the team that wins the Millionaire Maker, the Sunday Million. Is that it? How trash of a take is that?
No, it wouldn't surprise me. He lit up the Giants last year too. 7-1 touchdown interception ratio in those two games. The Giants have their safety situation is the worst in the
Not
NFL.
good.
I
It
mean,
is
there
not
there were
good.
people that thought Landon Collins, evaluators that I respect that thought Landon Collins should be a Thomas Davis type linebacker. He shouldn't be playing safety. Um, and then their
Well, that
other
should work out well against
safety
Caleb
is
Williams then.
and then their other safety is Cooper Taylor, who has played 5 NFL snaps. He's entering his third season. Teams that have bad safeties tend to give up huge plays. They have busts, they have coverage busts. Um, the Cowboys are going to have big plays on Sunday night, and
That's what they
Dez
do
is the
anyway.
best bet to get those.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
So do you kind
Yeah,
of like
are you
Terrence Williams
touching
as a
any of those
value?
RBs? By the way, Davis, are you touching any of those RBs?
No,
No.
no.
Okay.
I mean, I have
Not
Christine
wave.
Michael and I have Kristen Michael in like literally every single seasonal league because by like week 6 he's gonna be a legit thing. But no, not
Didn't
like the
Silva?
Cowboys are they're gonna open the season as a passing team. Like Romo might have like the best 4 game stretch of his career this first month of the season. This
Didn't
is the
Silva
best
nail
offensive
the
line.
Terrence Williams? Didn't Silva
Yes,
nail the Terrence Williams like 2 touchdown game last year? And those were his only 2 receptions, I think.
yes, that happened.
You know what
Terrence Williams
happens when
value play.
do you know what happens when you nail a min price wide receiver like that?
Pockets get swole.
Yeah,
Pockets
you
get
can you
very
can go
swole.
real swole,
Yeah. All
swollen.
right. Well, we can let's talk about sort of
That's
the
why
mid
Stevie
tier
Johnson,
of
man.
wide receivers.
That's why you got to jump on Stevie Johnson.
All
All
right.
right, mid
Well,
tier wide receivers.
the tier
J Matt.
before. So, well, obviously, like, okay, people have heard it from me. I've been saying it, and my column has said it. Want to talk about the matchup versus Alford and how great of a matchup it is for J Matt this week?
Yeah, and dude, the Falcons coverage, like the Atlanta Journal Constitution, is so bad. Just the coverage of the team is like the worst in the NFL. And you can watch preseason games, but Desmond Trufant wasn't playing, so you don't really get a great feel for who is going to be where. So I asked Andrew Parsons, who's like, you know who that is?
Oh yeah,
Andrew Parsons on
old
Twitter.
Andy from Draft Mecca.
Yeah, and he thinks that it's going to be either Alford or Philip Adams in the slot, with Trufant on the outside, messing around with Riley Cooper and Aguilar or Josh Huff, however that plays out. I don't know. That's why I'm not messing around with those guys. So it's either going to be Phillip Adams or Robert Alford. And Robert Alford is a gambling type cornerback who he actually has some big playability, but he will just get smoked. And he's small.
Dude,
He's real
J-Matt
small.
has
I mean,
20 pounds and
he's like
5 inches.
5'10", 188. Yeah, he's 5'10", 188, and J-Matt is 6'3", 212. And Phillip Adams is a guy who's been on like 6 different NFL teams and is also small, 5'11", like 192. That's actually not that small by cornerback standards, but it's much smaller than J-Matt, who is a mismatch creator in the slot. Oh, J-Matt should go wild. He should go wild.
Yeah, it's going to be good. How many teams will you have J-Matt on cash, both sides, Dan? Just all of the J-Matt. Are you on Team J-Matt with us?
I think I have to be. I'd probably be disowned if I didn't.
You would.
So do you think? I guess a question for both of you. Do you guys think like a guy like Jarvis Landry is a decent pivot from J-Matt?
In tournaments, yes. But
Yeah, I mean,
even the ceiling.
Even cash, I know you're gonna play him in cash game no matter what. But let's say somebody has the hypothetical of can I play Landry over J-Matt? How stupid would they be? Is it acceptable? Is it not?
I mean, to me, that just sounds like you're asking for like 5 less points of ceiling. Because Jarvis Landry he's like never having a 37-point DraftKings game. That's never happening. Whereas that is like in the range of possibilities for someone who's as good as J-Matt. Like Landry's fine.
Let me add a little bit of anecdotal analysis here. At the Ravens Eagles, they had joint practices in training camp. And the Ravens beat writers, like they barely even, these beat writers, they don't know anything about players from other teams. So they came away from, I mean, and I saw this from multiple guys like Baltimore Sun, Jamison Hensley from ESPN. They were like, this Jordan Matthews guy is like incredible. I mean, he was destroying fools in those practices. And then if you watch the preseason games, I mean, J-Matt didn't play a ton, but when he was out there, he looked like a man among boys. I mean, he is ready to just destroy people.
Dude, he went in the second round of the NFL draft. That happened. Hey, at least the team traded an extra first for Sammy Watkins, though. That also happened.
Hey, we didn't talk about AJ Green among the elite wide receiver ones.
Yeah, Bengals players are always great tournament plays because everyone hates Andy Dalton. But the Raiders' best corner is what, like a 7th round draft pick that they signed, and like DJ Hayden like can't get on the field. That's right, Evan?
Well, DJ Hayden is going to start, which is really, really bad for the Raiders because he's a bust.
They took him third overall.
And TJ Carey is their number 1 corner. He was a 7th round pick a couple years ago. I mean, he's, that's like a good draft pick by them, but it's not like he's going to go shut down AJ Green, And then their nickel, who plays on the outside, and their nickel is a guy named Nico Thorpe. So AJG, I think he's a great cash and great tournament play because, like you said, people are like, oh, Andy Dalton,
People hate Andy Dalton, man. They really do.
I mean, he had 33 touchdown passes 2 years ago. I don't think that he's like, I would say he's a mediocre to low-end NFL starter, but he can be productive when he has players around him. They have a great offensive line, and they get back Eifert, Marvin Jones, and A.J. Green is healthy. I like Dalton this year in fantasy.
Here's a guy who I don't think anyone is touting, and is currently in my FanDuel cash game lineup. DeAndre Hopkins might lead the NFL in targets this season. Kansas City spent 2 top 100 picks on cornerbacks. One that I am kind of ambivalent on, Marcus Peters. One who I think is a super talented player in Steven Nelson. But I don't know if either one of them are ready to start week 1 because they both earn negative pass coverage grades by PFF in the preseason. Who is going to cover Hopkins, Evan?
I think he's going to move around a ton.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't
and
even.
and the Chiefs will just stay put because Peters is a rookie. Like they're not going to have him running around. They're without Sean Smith, he's really their best corner.
Yeah.
And then who is their other starter? Now
I'm pulling it up right now because it will. So it should be Cooper, right?
Oh, it's
But
Philip
Cooper.
Gaines. No, it's Philip Gaines. It's Philip Gaines.
Yes. Oh,
He's
Cooper's not even
decent.
on the
I mean,
team.
no, he is. He's just at the way bottom of the depth chart. Either way, it's a good spot for Hopkins, but he's going to move around. Andre Johnson in that role, he was the number 5. He finished 5th in the NFL in targets last year. Dead-legged Andre Johnson.
Yeah, kid, great yards per target too.
Hopkins was the number 14 overall fantasy wide receiver, despite finishing 21st among wide receiver targets. Hopkins is going to have games this year where he gets like 14, 15 targets.
This might be one of them. The games without Arian Foster early on.
Exactly.
Are you on board with?
How are they going to move the ball, dude? How are they going to move the ball? They're not going to. You think they're going to move the ball, handing it to Tuttle's boy, Alfred Blue?
Yes, this is what I wanted to ask you about. So, Dan, if you were trying to create roster space, do you think that Alfred Blue is a must-play this week?
Screw Alfred Blue. Screw him.
For those who are listening to the show,
he was not a must-play last year either.
For those who are listening to the show and didn't listen last year, the week that Alfred Blue set the Texans franchise record for carries, Dan was pretty adamant that he was not a must play for minimum salary. Pretty adamant about it.
He got you like 16 points. I think he got 15 FanDuel points.
Literally, actually, I don't think he caught a pass, and he only got like 150 yards rushing on 38 carries.
What was the stat going around that he over 50% of his carries were under 2 yards or something like that?
Yards. Yeah.
that is how bad Alfred Blue is. Must play though.
But even that week, like, he didn't catch any passes, he didn't score any touchdowns. I mean, you weren't winning tournaments with Alfred Blue. You weren't going to the Playboy Mansion.
Yes, that's definitely true.
Right.
We got a question about Preston Parker in the chat. Looks like he's gonna get some snaps for the Giants this week with Victor Cruz out. Are we on Preston Parker this week, Dave?
All in.
Well, there we go.
He's a better value play than Devonte Adams.
I mean, you can't deny it's actually kind of insane how much value there is out there in week 1, and it'll happen every year with the sites releasing the salaries so early, but roles change so much in the preseason. Like Jordan Matthews 6,800 is to me just as hilarious, as Bradford's like it's just these are just bad price tags. And
so when J-Matt goes 8,134. What does his price jump up to? What does his price jump up to next week?
I mean, FanDuel normally doesn't make gigantic adjustments in salary week to week. That's not really their style. Although they have been more dynamic in baseball season, so it is kind of interesting to see what they do. Maybe he'll jump up to 9,000. But it also took them forever, both of the sides, to adjust to Odell Beckham breaking NFL records last year. So they adjusted quicker than I did to it. I'll say that, but still pretty slow. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about tight ends. Is it just Greg?
No. Rube Randall.
There we go. Rube against Mo Claiborne. I mean, it's not the worst matchup.
It's a pretty good matchup, man. No Victor Cruz.
How long?
I feel like Rube will just go like 6 for 70 on 11 targets. That's like his ceiling.
He's like big Marcus Wheaton. He's just like absolutely terrible, can't play, but he has to be on the field due to circumstance. Like Marcus Wheaton is terrible, and so is Ruben Randall.
All right, let's do tight ends.
Greg Olsen is like the ultimate chalk of chalk. Like what do you think he'll be owned in FanDuel cash games, Dan?
We had Devonte Adams. I think 33% is what someone said.
Yeah.
He can't be higher than that. Although
dude, I don't know. I guess it's pretty rough.
I guess around that 30%. Yeah, because it is rough. I mean, you're looking at If you're looking for just straight receptions, you're looking at like what Greg Olsen, Martellus Bennett's going to get a lot of catches. Uh, it drops
That's
off
who I
quite a
like,
bit. I
Marty
mean,
B.
we don't trust Jimmy Graham at as the highest priced tight end, right? Like that's
No.
not a
No.
thing.
I mean, I think he's in play, but like I would just much prefer Olsen. You know.
Right.
I
So yeah,
go ahead, Dan.
I was just gonna say yeah. So I mean, cash game, I guess it really is probably Olsen or Martellus, depending on which way you want to go there. And then it drops off quite a bit after that. I mean, Richard Rodgers is a good play if you're looking real cheap. Jordan Reed, of course, dad runner. What doesn't
No,
JJ
Jordan
love
Reed is not a
looking at
dad
his
runner.
rosters?
Jordan Reed is an athlete,
He's
bro.
not a dad. He's not a
He
dad
came to
runner, but
Florida
JJ
as a
loves
running
him,
back.
right?
Yeah, JJ does love him. I know the one tight end who I want to be excellent, and Evan's gonna kill me because I got this guy from him, and now he no longer believes. One Mr. Josh Hill for the New Orleans Saints. You were the one who like introduced me to how great he was, and now you're about to tell me that like Peyton. You're about to tell me that like Peyton hates him, and he's just like Ladarius Green all over again.
Oh, he might be. I just want to see his playing time and his usage. It wouldn't surprise me if he had a bigger role than we expect in week one. Arizona annually gets just destroyed by tight ends. Last year
Every
was no
year.
different.
Every year.
I think they allowed the fifth most fantasy points to tight ends last year. Um,
And 8 targets a
you know
game to
the
tight ends.
That's oftentimes a function of like blitzing because you're leaving the middle of the field wide open when you're sending guys,
And they don't have good
and they do
safeties.
and they do have a new defensive coordinator this year. Um, but I want to see how Josh Hill gets used. I'm not messing around with him. I got a little bit of Ben Watson just because he's min price. And I think he's going to be on the field as a full time player. Look at the other
Well, he
targets that the
played he
Saints
played
have.
600
They've
snaps
got
last year though. Watson did.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot more opportunity for targets now. I don't know. I wouldn't tell anybody to play Ben Watson. Um, you know, but I agree with you guys. It's like it's Olsen or Marty B, or you're punting like Richard Rodgers, Crockett Gilmore, Ben Watson, Jordan Cameron is super cheap. I mean, are you on Kelsey at all, Davis?
I mean, I'm on Kelsey in the sense that I think if you're not making Kelsey tournament teams, you like probably just don't think he's that talented because matchup doesn't really matter to him because Kelsey's good games aren't going to be when he gets a ton of targets. It's going to be when he catches a pass in the flat, throws a linebacker to the ground, hurdles a safety, and like dives into the end zone twice. Because like he's just as physically imposing as Gronkowski, and more so than Jimmy Graham. He just plays in a clogged toilet offense. So I actually think nailing Kelsey down week to week might be one of the most difficult things about daily fantasy this year. Seriously. So
It
that
could
kind of
be. I wish they wouldn't have went out and got Macklin, and they just fed the rock to Kelsey like 11 times a game. But
I
not
don't know.
happening.
Maybe I mean Fasano's gone.
They're gonna need him to in this game. They're gonna need him to help block J.J. Watt. Like they don't have other blocking tight ends. They cut Fasano. Their number 2 tight end is James O'Shaughnessy, a 5th-round rookie, and their number 3 guy is Demetrius Harris, a former basketball player. Like they're gonna need Kelsey to help block J.J. Watt. You have to block J.J. Watt.
And Kelsey is finished last season as the I believe the 5th best run blocker in all of football by Pro Football Focus grading. So
Yeah,
which
he's
makes
a great
sense.
football player.
Dude, he's amazing. He's mini Gronk, man. Like that's a real thing. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. We've ran you through all the positions. We've talked about a bunch of guys. So we'll just all right. Who is your favorite punt overall? That's not Stevie Johnson, Evan. Favorite punt can't be Stevie Johnson.
Josh Lambo, Chargers kicker.
No, no. I mean, obviously everyone needs to know to play Lambo on FanDuel, but favorite non-Josh Lambo, non-Stevie Johnson punt, or just
Uh,
value overall.
I don't know. Go to Tuttle first.
Tuttle, same question.
It's gonna be I'm gonna go a toss
Yes,
up between two guys here, and
that's
it's gonna
fine.
be at the tight end position. because DraftKings went down to 2,500 as their floor for the tight end position.
I did
So
not
it's
even
going to be
notice that.
yep. So I think that's a really good way to kind of take advantage of min price players there. I would be at the tight end position. So it's going to be a toss up between good old Crockett Gilmore and Richard Rodgers.
Rocky Gilmore is actually a good one. That's a good take, Dan. I applaud you for
He's
that
the
take.
thing. He's the thing.
Yeah, he is. He is. That's a real take. I'll say mine is I'm gonna steal one. I know Evan probably likes this guy too. Tyler Lockett. Stack him with the Seahawks defense in the tournament. All the wide receiver coaches and Pete Carroll seem to indicate he'll be on the field in some packages. Basically, people might remember Paul Richardson. Paul Richardson is like a really, really bad version of what Tyler Lockett is. Tyler Lockett does the things well that people thought Paul Richardson did well. So he
I
should
tried to
have a
make him a
role.
thing one week.
I'm probably not ever gonna forgive you. That cost me some coin one week. Evan, all right, back to you, buddy.
Paul Richardson and Devin Smith are like the bane of Davis Maddox's existence.
I mean, I want the Jets to flourish because I follow Eric Decker wherever he goes, and I also love Jason Morrow. And Devin Smith was a really bad draft pick. He was really
Okay,
bad.
my punt is Leonard Hankerson. Hear me out.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
so
listening.
let's say Byron Maxwell slows down Julio a little bit. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen.
It's in
I
the
have
realm of
Julio.
possibility, though.
I think I have 100% Julio exposure. I think I do. Um,
Crash.
Roddy White is like, I mean, he's done. He's done. Elbow and knee problems. Turns 34 next month. Barely practice at all in camp in a new offense. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't shock me if Leonard Hankerson started over Roddy White. Even if he doesn't, it's going to be a 3-receiver team. Their running game is a huge concern right now. Their offensive line is awful, and their tight ends are just like, it's hilarious who their tight ends are. So they're going to need to be a 3-receiver team to open the season, and Leonard Hankerson is going to be a full-time player in the offense. I think he's going to have this is a great matchup for him too. With Maxwell on Julio, he's going to draw those bad cornerbacks that we were discussing previously.
Well, this is a great show. We got through. We didn't have to mention Harry Douglas. We didn't mention Justin Hunter. So it was pretty good. I think this was a successful return for team Pockets on Swole, and we got like literally like 1 minute left. So we're all just gonna name our favorite overall play. It can be Stevie Johnson for you, Evan. Can be whoever. I'm gonna say my favorite overall play. Both I'll say two: Jordan Matthews and Adrian Peterson. Dan, who are yours?
Julio.
Julio. All right, Evan.
Julio.
Just your favorite play.
Ivory Jets D correlation.
There you go. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's excellent. All right. Everyone, make sure to check out all the cool stuff we have going on over at Fantasy Insiders. I did a post on the forums running down all the NFL content that we had out this week. So we have crap from just everybody. We have game by game breakdowns, injury reports, everything. Make sure to check out Evan Silva's matchup piece on rotoworld.com. It's excellent. And for Evan and Dan, later, everybody.
Peace.